Hello out there in internet land, and thanks for joining me. My name is Gabe Hollenby, and I am a developer advocate here at Amazon Web Services, coming to you live right now from my house in Singapore. And in today's episode of Developers Let's Code, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to deploy static websites and single-page applications on AWS. So we're going to use a service called the AWS Amplify console for that. And normally, I want to encourage all of you to ask any questions that you've got. That's what I'm here for. So take advantage of the live format, please. I'll try and make a few interactive things throughout the stream today. Cool. So hello, Mr. Bob Quadruple 5. It's nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. So let's get started. I want to start with a overview of what AWS Amplify console is. And so the easiest way to find out is to go to our website. So here I am. If you just search for AWS Amplify, you'll end up here on this product detail page. And there's actually a lot here. Amplify is a few different things. And in today's show, we're just going to focus on one of the pillars of Amplify. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's basically the Amplify framework that talks about a lot of stuff, and we're going to cover some of that next week. But this week, we're going to focus on this part of Amplify features, which is a static web hosting. So if you come here and you click on the link for AWS Amplify console, you can see more information just about Amplify console. So here what you can see is, basically, as it says on the box, AWS Amplify console is a static web hosting service that accelerates your application release cycle, providing a simple CI/CD workflow for building and deploying static web applications or websites. And so instead of just reading the marketing site, let's just quickly look over a few features that I'm hoping to cover today, and then we'll dive right in with lots and lots of demos. And I'll try to do my best to answer any questions you all have. So here we can see some of the nice things it gives you. Scalable hosting, talks about feature branch deployments. That sounds pretty neat. Custom domain setup, continuous workflows, globally available, password protection. I'll try and tick off all these boxes today in what I'm going to cover in the next hour. So let's just get started with our first demo. Now, first I'm going to use an account, my own personal AWS account here, where I have a domain registered, because I want to show you how easy it is to end up setting up custom domain hosting as well for the websites that you build with AWS Amplify, or I should say that you host with AWS Amplify console. So if you come to the AWS Management Console, I'm already logged in here. You can see that you've got a AWS Amplify option here. You can just type Amplify here, and it'll come up in the search. So let's go there. And what I want to do is deploy. So I'm going to click on the Get Started section for deploy. And you can see here, I've got a few options. I can deploy from existing code, or from samples, or from scratch. Now, I want to use existing code. The first way I want to host a website is I'm just going to go with the simplest thing possible. Let's imagine we have a website that's already pre-built. It's all static HTML. I didn't even use a website builder for it. It's just some files on my disk that I can edit, right? The simplest thing possible. And so for that example, I'm going to use html5up.net, which has a lot of pretty websites that we can download and customize to our heart's content. My first poll for all of you viewers who are out here today, which one of these lovely templates should I use? Should we use Paradigm Shift? Should we use this one called Massively, Ethereal, Story, Dimension, Editorial, 40? Give me a vote here. It looks like Editorial is pretty popular. And so is Dimension with 273,000 downloads. But give me a vote here. Massively looks nice. It says lol spark. Okay. Let's try Massively. That's the first one. Yep, because AWS is massive. Nice. I like that. Okay. So let's click free download here. So that's going to download onto my machine. And I'll open that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to upload that to the console. So I have a few options here in Amplify console for where it's going to get my website code from. I can connect to a Git repository, and for most of the demos today, I'll do that. I'll point at GitHub where I'll make some repos. But let's go with the simplest thing we could possibly do, which is we don't even have a Git repo. I just got it. I have a folder on my desktop. I want to get it onto a website. So I'm going to pick Deploy Without Git Provider and click Continue. Now I need to give this app a name, so we'll just call it DLC Live simple demo. I'll give this an environment name. So Amplify console lets you have this different environments of the same site or app, which can be pretty useful for testing things like feature branches or whatnot. I'll just call this one prod. And I have a few options. I can deploy from drag and drop from my machine. I can point at content that's already in an Amazon S3 bucket, or I can point at a zip file that's anywhere on the internet. But for this purpose, I'll do the simplest thing I can think of and just drag and drop from my machine. So I'm going to, if you can see here, I'm going to copy this HTML5 up massively folder, and I'm just going to deploy that straight away. And then I'll click Save and Deploy. Let's see what happens. Now, I've actually never deployed this site with Amplify console before, so hopefully it works, but if it doesn't, you can see me troubleshoot this live. Hey, Footscryer, thanks for joining us. And so we can see it's got a little status here. It says deploying, and pretty quickly it should end up being done. So we'll see it's at 70% right now, and now it says deployment successfully completed. So if the demo gods are with me today for my first demo of the stream, let's see. So here I can see I've got a domain that was automatically generated for me, prod.someuniquecode.amplifyapp.com. So let's click on that and see what the site looks like. There it is. So it's just that simple, right? So I copied a folder from my desktop with some, if we want to look and see what the content of that folder looks like, I can bring that up just to show you guys. So this folder, I don't know if you can see all this, maybe I can zoom it some. It's just got static HTML in it, right? We've got assets, we have some images, we've got index.html. It's just that simple. And from that, we were able to deploy a website. Pretty cool. Now, obviously, we could tweak this however we want on our local disk and upload a new version manually over and over and over again and get those updates deployed very quickly as you just saw. But let's move on. Let's do the next thing that most people ask when they want to set up their own website, which is, let's say we want our own custom domain. I like that I can get these free domains from Amplify console, but what if I want a custom domain? So let's try and set that up. So back here, I'm going to go to the domain management section here in my app settings, and I'm going to click Add Domain. Now, what I should show you first, perhaps, is that well, it'll show it in the dropdown, so never mind. I'm going to click Add Domain, and I can pick. By default, these are the domains that I have registered in Amazon's Route 53, which is the DNS hosting service that we have. So let's pick hollandby.com, which I don't have anything up on that right now. And so it's a good thing for me to test with for the purposes of this demo. So we'll just say hollandby.com is where I want my custom domain I want to host this site on. And I'll click Configure Domain. And I could have typed anything here, by the way, right? But it defaults to the dropdown for the domains that I have registered. And that's the demo I want to show you first is if you've already registered a domain with Route 53 in your same AWS account, it's really simple. So by default, it's going to set up hollandby.com to host that prod environment that I already created, and www.hollandby.com will host prod. I can set up a redirect from hollandby.com to www.hollandby.com. That all seems fine. Let's leave the defaults alone. Let's click Save. Okay, so now you're going to see it's going to do a few steps for me automatically. Right now, it's issuing an SSL certificate to secure traffic for my custom domain. So I don't have to set that up, which is pretty great. Then, because in this particular demo I'm showing you right now, I'm using a custom domain that's already hosted with Route 53 in the same account. Amplify console is going to go in and recognize that, okay, Amazon knows I control that domain. It doesn't need to do any other work. It will configure and activate for me. Now, this only takes a few minutes, so I'm going to leave this running in the background for a minute. We're going to go on and look at another demo, and then we'll come back and we'll see if this is done. So fingers crossed. Takes maybe a minute or two, but I don't want to just sit here and watch a progress bar for the purpose of this stream. Any questions before I go on? Just drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will move on to my next part of the demo. So, okay. Let's let that run in the background and let's talk about another popular use case you might have, which is static site generation. Right now, in principle, this is really not much different than what we just did. It's just most of us don't these days. I think for a lot of cases, we might not have just handcrafted HTML files on our disk. we might use a static site generator. So I'm going to show you a couple popular tools there and how easy it is to use those along with Amplify console. So the first one is Hugo, right? So there's we can see this is already almost done. So we'll come back to this in just a second. But I mentioned Hugo, so let me talk about that. So Hugo is a very popular static site generator. I think it's a good one to demo because a lot of you out there might be using it. And just to follow along, if we do a quick start and see what we need to do to get started using Hugo to generate a static website for us, we can see that first we need to install Hugo. I'm on a Mac. I've already done a homebrew install for that, but there's instructions for you that you can follow. That's not the fun part to watch, so I'll go down to the next part, which is, it looks like I'm going to need to do Hugo New Site and give it a name. I'm going to need to add a theme. And then, I should be good to go. So let's try it out. I'm going to copy a few of these and consolidate them together. Let me just get these into my clipboard. Well, let's do this one first. Cool. So we're going to say Hugo New Site Quick Start. Why not? Cool. And now we've got it there, so we can go into that directory. And we can do a git init and add a submodule for a theme, like it tells us to do. And then we can add the theme to the site's configuration. So we can try that. And then just for funsies, let's quickly look at that config.toml file. We can see here the base URL is example.org. Now, I happen to know with Hugo, if you don't provide a base URL, it'll make all the things with relative links, which is pretty easy and will work nicer in this case. So I'm just going to comment that out, and I'm going to say relative URLs equals true, because that's a nice setting to put in. We can change the title if we want, but let's leave that alone. So with those changes in place, I should be able to add some content. So it wants me to say Hugo New Posts My First Post. So let's run that. Let's see, hopefully that'll work. It does. It made something in here called Content Posts My First Post. So we can look at that. We can see it says draft true. We can change it to draft false because I actually want this to deploy. And then we can type some markdown here. Wow, hello world. This is a demo of Hugo building a page. So I've saved that file. And at this point, I'm good to build my my site. And if I left the draft as true, then as the documentation says, I can say Hugo-D to build with drafts enabled. But I've already made it so the draft is false. So I can just say Hugo, and it'll build that on my local disk. But let's do something else. Let's have Amplify console build it for me. So first thing, let's check on this. Now this might actually be done. Really quickly switching gears. We were trying to wait for the custom domain to work. Usually when it says domain activation, it stays in this setting longer than it actually needs to. So it's possible that right now, if we go to hollandme.com, we'll see the same site deployed. Let's check it out. Not yet. Okay, so it is still actually baking here. It can take a while for that. We'll come back later on in the stream and hopefully it'll have finished activating. So what do I want to do? I want to have the Amplify console build this site for me whenever I check into Git. Like that's my that's kind of my holy grail for what I want to see. Just quickly looking at the chat here, Hugo and Gatsby are great for this. Yes, go Guppy. I'm going to show Gatsby next. Yeah, wouldn't it be funny? Microsoft front page, I do remember those days. Yeah, looking at the chat, any other questions here? I'm in Lunar. What AWS, on AWS, what IDE is that? I'm demoing the AWS Amplify console. I haven't shown you any IDEs yet. Yes, there you go. It's Amplify. So pros and cons of Hugo versus Jekyll. I'm not going to get into that. Jekyll is another popular static site generator you might be interested in. But let's go ahead and set up a new Git repo, push to that, and have Amplify console build from that, because I think that would be fun. So really quickly, just off screen, I'm going to make a new GitHub repo. Well, here, I can bring this up now. So let's call this DLC live Hugo site, and we'll make that a public repo. That's fine. I will initialize it with nothing in it. And then we'll just follow their simple copy and paste instructions here. And just for giggles, to make things simple, I'm actually going to go ahead and blow away the Git directory here and reinitialize it with the one that I need, because that'll be fine. So there's our first commit with just an empty README from GitHub. I'm also going to add all of the stuff that we have here. First content commit. And I'll just push that to GitHub. Cool. So I've pushed it to GitHub, but Amplify console isn't building from it yet. So what do we need to do? I'm going to go back and I'm going to make a new app here. I'm going to say connect app. And this time I'm going to say connect from GitHub instead of from deploy without Git provider. Now, there's a step here that I've already done. You can see here, it says GitHub authorization was successful. If you're doing this for the first time, it'll ask you to authorize Amplify console to have read-only access to your GitHub account, or Bitbucket, or whichever other one of the providers you wanted to use. And there it is right there, DLC Live Hugo site. I want to build from the main branch. Just a neat thing I'm not going to demo, but if you have a mono repo with a lot of sites inside one repo, you can pick a subfolder here, which is kind of neat. But we don't have that as a use case right now, so I won't check that box. I'll click next. And what we can look at here is the build settings that Amplify console is going to try and detect here. Now, this isn't exactly right for Hugo, because I know the way Hugo builds things. So Amplify console will not get it right all the time. It will for the other demos I'm going to show you. But let's just quickly edit this and tell it. So I know the way Hugo should build is just by running Hugo. So I want the Amplify console to build by just running Hugo. And I know that the base directory that Hugo puts its content in is called public. So if I've done this right, and I think I have, I'll just save that. And those are my build settings that I want. I'll click next. I'll click save and deploy. And we'll see what happens. Now, just for fun, we can go back and we can look at and see if my simple demo happens to be running on hollenby.com yet. Again, sometimes it takes, it's ready even before this. So I'm just going to check out hollenby.com again. Yep, I can see it loading already. So there we go, right? hollenby.com, automatically using Amplify console to host my site. Really easy with a custom domain setup. It didn't take that long. I didn't have to mess with SSL or anything. And there it is, using HTTPS as we want. So that's really great. That was pretty easy and pretty fast as well. So hopefully I've shown you how easy it can be. If we have time at the end, I'll show you how to set up with a different DNS provider if you're not registered your domain with AWS Route 53. So we'll wait till the end. I'd love to be able to show that if we have time, but there's other demos I want to get through first. So back to all apps, we can watch here. We can see the different stages that Amplify console goes through. So when it's going to build when it's going to do basically continuous integration and continuous delivery build, it has to do a provisioning step, which we can look at. We can see that basically the way this works is it builds a Docker, takes a Docker image. It's totally hermetic. It gets its own instance. It sets up that Docker image. After that, it goes to a build phase where you can see it pulled from my repo, and then it ran the front end build. I can look at the output. I can see it ran the command Hugo. This is the output from Hugo. It looks like it made 10 pages, blah, 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 blah. This all looks good. And then it went through the deploy step. I can see it already did that. And then look at this. There's also this verify tab. So this actually just takes like a screenshot of your homepage at different style device widths, which can be helpful if you want a quick at a glance look and see what everything looks like. And I can go ahead and just click this to see if it's actually built it. And there it is, my new Hugo site. So, I can click into this post if I want and see just the details on it. So that was pretty easy too. Pretty easy to get up and running with Hugo. Let me just go back and see if there's any questions here. Yeah, the sanity check is a nice feature, Guppy. Yeah, the view option is really awesome. Like Amplify Console just does a lot to make your job really easy. It has a lot of really nice developer ergonomics. So let me continue. The next demo I want to show is using Gatsby instead. Right? Gatsby is just another static site generator, but it's a pretty popular one. So maybe we should do that next. Well, actually, I'll give you all viewers a choice because we probably have time for all of this content, but just in case we don't. Voting time. Would you rather see me do Gatsby next, or would you rather see me do a React app so I can also show some continuous integration where we can set up a failing test and see how the deploy doesn't pass? So I'd like to get to both, but which one do you want to see next? A simple React app for a static, for a single page app, or should we do Gatsby? Couple votes for React, which is good. Gatsby, by the way, uses React, so that's just a nice little nod. Maybe we can get to Gatsby too. A lot of votes for React, and you want to see something failing, which I think is good. So let's do that. Alrighty. So to do that, I'm just going to make a new React app. So we'll say, this takes a second anyway. Create React app. What shall we call our app? DLC Live React. Cool. Everybody votes for React. So while we're waiting for, sorry, you can't see this. While you're waiting for half the internet to download here, as I just do a npx create React app, I'll look and see if we have any more questions. But basically what my plan is going to be is I'm going to take this React app and we'll quickly deploy it. We'll set up a new repo. That's what we can actually do while we're waiting for this to build. So let's get GitHub back here. And let's make a new repository again. So we'll call this one DLC Live React App. And we'll make this a public repo also. It doesn't have to be public, right? Because I'm granting Amplify Console permissions to read from my GitHub. So I could have made it private. That's pretty important to know. I'm just making it public because why not, for the purposes of this, in case any of you want to see these repos afterwards. And I'll just get this ready to set up in a new repo. Let's see how that build is working. It's actually almost done. Doesn't take too much longer once it gets to the building fresh packages state. So let's see. Hopefully soon we'll, there we go. We're done. Well, almost done. This part goes very quickly usually. Thank you, NPM, for resolving lots of dependencies and also downloading half the internet for me. I jumped the gun. There's another stage here where we're still trying to resolve things. So while we're waiting for that, let me just see if we have any other questions here. Fresh package massively. Yes. All right, it's ready now. So let's change to my React directory. I'm going to, again, just blow away this default Git repo that it set up for me because I'll just make a new one here with an empty README from GitHub. And now I'm just going to, I'm going to add all of these files. This is the default files you get when you make a React app. Let's push that up to GitHub. And now let's go connect another app in Amplify Console. So back to all apps. We'll connect a new app from GitHub. Same thing as before, but I could also use Bitbucket or GitLab or AWS Code Commit. And there it is. DLC Live React app is the one I want. My main branch is what I want to deploy. And here we can see that it's auto-detected, and this time I know that these are the right settings. I'm happy for it to use yarn. It's going to run yarn run build. I'm going to make one tweak to this, though, which is I know that if you look at the create React app, if you look at the documentation for create React app, and we look at the CI settings, which I think is kind of useful to know about because effectively, the Amplify console is acting as a CI server for us. Then where is the doc? Main concepts, advanced guides. There's something here about continuous integration. Let's check here. This is not the documentation I was looking for. Create React app. Oh, you know what? I think it might be in the... This is it, I think. Yeah, here we go. Create React app.dev. This is the site I was looking for. Is my browser responding? Yes. Okay. So hopefully this will load. In the meantime, I'll just tell you what I know, which is in the docs, they'll tell you to set CI equal to true for running your builds, and that will go ahead and do the whatever builds you need. Let's see. Here it is. So in the Create React App docs here, if we look under CI equals true, yeah. So see, you can see npm test is how we want to run the tests, and npm run or yarn and build is what we want. So setting CI to true for the first thing what I want to do is I want to do yarn run test, and then I want CI equals true yarn run build. And the rest of the base directory for building and everything is good. I'm happy with that. So I'll save those settings. I'm pretty sure that's right. Just to sanity check, I'm going to look and see. Yeah, I think that's right. Let's assume I've done that right. We'll click next. And I can save and deploy this. And this is going to be a successful deploy, right? We don't have a failure yet because I haven't introduced a failing test, but I want to see it succeed first before I introduce a failure to see what happens. So there's this provisioning step again, which generally only takes about 30 seconds or so, and then it'll kick off into the build phase, and we can watch along as it goes. Let me see if we have any questions while we're waiting. How's the pacing here, everyone? Just give me a sanity check on this. Am I moving at a good speed? Would you like me to go slower or faster? Give me some votes here. Now we're already in the build phase, which is good. We can go and we can look at what it's doing. So it's still in the cloning the repo phase. Good speed. Faster, just kidding, pawn noobs. I can try talking really fast if you want. So as we can see here, it's in the build phase now. It's pulling from my repo, then it will go ahead and execute the commands I've given it inside that environment. Let's get ready for a failing test, by the way, because I'm pretty sure this is going to work. Actually, it's pretty close to being done, but let's get our failing test ready to go. So what do we want to do? We want to edit app.js first, and let's change this. Let's say, okay, I know there happens to be the one test it generates is going to look for the words learn React like we have here. So why don't I make it say, really learn React is my intent. But then let's look at the test. And we can see there's a test here that looks for learn React. But let's make a breaking test. So I'll make it say don't learn React, which will fail because it doesn't say that, right? It says really learn React. And so if I write that, I'll thank you for the hat. I'm glad you like it, folks. I have a big collection. So I don't have a lot of hair, and so the hats help with the shiny head. So with that breaking test, we can review our changes here. We can see that we've made a change to really learn React, but our test says is looking for don't learn React. So intentionally breaking the build. I'll wait to push this until we know that we have a successful build. Looks like we do. We can even look at the verify section. It took some screenshots. Let's actually look at the app here in the browser. As you expect, if you've ever made a normal React app before from scratch, it starts out like this and tells you what to edit. And then, in your development mode, this refreshes automatically. So looks good. You can see here it said learn React. We changed ours to say really learn React, but our test isn't going to look for that. So it should fail. So I'm going to do a push right now. But before I do, let me get this on screen so you can see how quickly it's going to detect this. All right. Here's my push. And as soon as this push is done, let's come back here and let's watch the environment here. And I don't know if you can notice this, but already the arrows here for what build number we're on, in the header here, there's an arrow. I can see a new build kicked off. I could also have seen that if I had just clicked here to look at all of my environments. And so here it's going to provision, then it will run the build step, and hopefully the build will fail. And it will not deploy this update because the build failed, right? This is the CI part of CI/CD, or continuous integration and continuous deployment. I'm not going to talk about AWS certifications in this stream, although pro tip, that we have a great show called CQ, our certification quiz show, that was just on this channel 30 minutes ago before I started, and it's a great way to prepare yourself for different certifications. So go ahead and do a search for AWS CQ, and that's a show I strongly recommend for prepping for certifications, especially if you like Twitch. So we can see it's building again. This build, like I said, will probably fail. If we want to see it succeed, just again, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit so we don't have to watch things deploy, why don't we change it so our test passes now? So we'll make a new commit with our test passing, which is looking for don't learn React in any casing of the word. So I'll make that update. I'll say, yes, I want to commit that change. So this is fixing the build. I won't push this yet. Let's watch our build fail. Look at that. We have an X. And I can click here. I can see the build failed to complete. We can look here, the output, and I can see lots of output. Okay, there's my React scripts running test. And I can see here that I did have a failing test. And so it exited. And I can see, it expected don't learn React to be in the document, but it wasn't. So my test failed. Great. Let's push the fixed build. Yes, failing is fun. So with that build pushed, we can probably see it. There we go. I don't know if you saw that really quickly, but it just kicked off a new build and refreshed it here to show me. So that's nice. It's really fast. You don't have to wait very long. Now, while we're waiting for this, let me show you another feature I like, which is in Amplify console, the ability of having different environments. So, I can make a new environment by connecting a new branch manually if I want to. That's a nice way to do it. So if I happen to know that I have another branch, let me make a new branch here. I don't know. Let's call it crazy wording. And now if I edit my same site and I just call this something like I don't think you should not learn React. We'll make that really confusing. There's our new branch content. We'll make sure that's the only change we're committing. Yes. Confusing wording. We'll commit that. I'll push this new branch. And let's connect a new branch while we're here. So here, I can already see on my other branches, there's only one there, crazy wording. So I'll say I want to always build that branch too. Click save and deploy. And then there it is. It just kicked off my first build. I didn't have to click anything. And so we can see that. So we can even do multiple builds in parallel from your different branches and all that. So that's pretty nice. Let's see. We have our main environment succeeded. Looks good. It says don't learn React there, which is what we want, but you probably can't see that in the screenshot. So let's just reload our app here, and we can see that Yep, our build worked. So hooray, it says don't learn React as we expected. So the CI part of CI/CD on Amplify console, pretty easy to use as long as you can set up some shell scripts to run and return appropriate exit code when your tests don't pass. Now, instead of setting up these branches manually, which, as you can see, I have two here, my main one and crazy wording, there's another really neat feature, which is I can have the Amplify console automatically make these new environments for me based on branches that match a pattern. So if I go into App Settings General, and I click on Edit, we can see my production branches main, and I can turn on branch auto detection, which is pretty nice, and I can give it a pattern here. So I'll say, for example, any branches that start with feature, and that's I'm doing feature/star. So anything that a branch name that starts with feature slash, or it could be feature dash, or anything you want, whatever your convention is, it's going to automatically make a new environment for me. So I can also turn on branch auto disconnection, which I like. So if I delete a branch in the source repo, like after something got merged, it can delete that environment from my apps that it's built. So I'll save this. And now if we make another feature branch, or our first feature branch rather, so let's go back to master. Sorry, main. And we'll make a new branch called feature, I don't know, something new. And we'll just make a change here as well. Again, we'll just keep editing this text. Something new branch. There's our change. And I'm going to push that branch. And as you'll notice, when I do this, it will automatically start building for me an environment there. So I've pushed it, and in a little while, it'll show up here. Crazy wording has failed, probably because of our test. Oh, that's right, because I changed it to say I don't think you should not learn React. So our test is failing there. Fair enough. Obviously, we don't need to fix that. I think you guys understand what I'm talking about here. But if we go back and we look at all of these, we should hopefully see a new feature branch set up. There it is, feature something new. So it automatically picked that up. I didn't need to manually connect that branch, and it's going to go ahead and build me a new environment for that branch now. Pretty neat. We don't need that not fixed never. Exactly. So there's our CI kind of capability from that and the feature branch auto environment creation, which I wanted to run through. Let's do another neat feature, which is password protection. So if we go back to access control here in the sidebar, we can see here that the current access setting is publicly viewable for all of this stuff. I have the option for, on a branch by branch basis, setting different usernames and passwords if I want to make sure that this content is protected and only certain people who have the credentials can access it. Or I can also set up a global username and password for all of my things. So you can see here, I can apply a global password, or I can pick passwords for different branch names by changing it to restricted. So for example, let's make sure we like main, we want to be publicly viewable, but let's take our feature branch and make a password required here. And we can call this, I don't know, secret and password, the best password ever. Please don't ever make your passwords this simple. Cool. So now our something new branch, feature branch, has a password associated with it. So if we come back here and we look at that feature branch, which, yes, of course, the build is failing because of what we put there in the test. So this is great, actually, right? This is what we expect. Let's just edit our test. We called this, well, let's just make it look for the word React. Let's make sure that's always there. And then let's just make sure React still exists somewhere in here. It doesn't. Now it is. Review those changes and push again. Yes, yes. Fix build. So there's our test saving us from possibly introducing a breaking change that we didn't intend, or at least simulating that. So that's pushed. Our new feature branch will rebuild again. You can see there it already caught the push. And if we try to look at it once it's built, we'll have to enter username and password. So I'll come back and try that in just a second. Any other questions here? Just let me know. Otherwise, I think that the last thing I wanted to try and show you was, well, I mean, I could show you Gatsby if you all want to see Gatsby, or I'll put one other option in front of you, which is, if you like, we can, I can try showing you how to set up a custom domain when the DNS isn't managed by Route 53 in the same account that you're using Amplify console in. So would you rather see that, how you set up custom domains with a different DNS provider or in it from a different account, or would you rather see Gatsby? This is my vote question for you all. Hey, Gold Sanchez, welcome. Custom domains, another vote for that from Pawn Noob. In case you're just joining us, by the way, we're getting towards the end of the stream, but I'm showing you how to use AWS Amplify console to deploy static websites and single page web apps really easily. Custom domains, votes for custom domains. Good, I thought you would ask for that. Let's dig into that, because that's going to take a few minutes actually to do that work. And so if we're lucky, it'll actually finish in time. It is a make your own adventure book. We call them choose your own adventure in the US where I grew up. But if they called it make your own adventure down under, then I know what you're talking about, John. All right, lots of votes for custom domains. So let's do that. Just really quickly, we can see here that we're still in the build phase for our something new branch. Oh, good, it just finished that. So let me close the loop on that one. Remember, we put a password in place on that. So if I try and load that, it's going to ask for username and password. So if I type the right password, I can see the content. There it is, something new branch for React. Cool. Amazing. Passwords work. So let's switch gears. Now, I don't have any domains registered with a different provider besides AWS. So we're going to simulate how you would do this by me setting up a Amplify console app in a different AWS account, which doesn't have any domains registered for Route 53, if that makes sense. So let's do that. So here I am in a different AWS account. I'll go to Amplify console. I'll say get started. Just for simplicity's sake, let's just push a folder from my hard drive. So deploy without Git provider. We can call this DLC live custom domain. I'll give this an environment name. We'll call this prod also. We'll say drag and drop. I'll do another drag and drop. Oops, downloads there. So I want to drag and drop this onto here and save and deploy. And here we go. These deploys are also pretty fast because there's no build step it needs to do, right? It just has to put these things in place. Now, what I haven't said explicitly that maybe is a cool thing to say is, AWS has a content delivery network, a CDN called Amazon CloudFront, and this maintains points of presence all over the world, over 200 of them. And when you use Amplify console, your sites that it's hosting get distributed through that content delivery network automatically. There's no work you need to do to set that up. And that's really nice because that means your users connect to a server serving your site from a point of presence that is geographically closer to where they are than they otherwise would be. If everything was all served, for, let's say, from a server in the US, then all my friends in Australia would have to pay a longer latency time to request the site, which doesn't happen thanks to Amplify console and setting up the CloudFront distribution for you automatically. Now, remember what we want to do. We want to go back to domain management. We want to add a domain. Now here, let's say I want hollenby.com. You can see no Amazon Route 53 domains found in your account because I'm using a different account here. This is actually not my personal account. This is a work account that I have. So I'll say hollenby.com is the domain that I want to host for, and I'll click configure domain. And in this case, we've still got the other stuff happening, right? We've got hollandme.com and www.hollandme.com serving from my other account. So let's exclude the root just for the demo purpose here. And let's say we want to put this other one on a different subdomain. So we'll call this, I don't know, something.hollandme.com and serve the prod environment from here. Yeah, I know. Who knew a static site could be this interesting? Exactly. So I'll just set that up and we'll click save. And I'm going to have to do a little more manual work here. Now, before, when Route 53 was in the same environment, the same AWS account, Amplify console could do all that work for me. But here, it's going to ask me to do some work to prove that I own the domain that I want Amplify console to host for. And then I'm also going to need to set up a Cname record in my DNS to point to a server that Amplify console tells me to use where it's hosting the site. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to have to wait a minute while the SSL creation step happens. This usually only takes a minute or two. And then we'll get to the configuration section where it may ask me to add some records into my DNS entries for my domain that I want to set up here, in this case, hollandme.com, to prove my ownership of it. And then, of course, to redirect something.hollandme.com to AWS's servers. So let's hang tight for a minute, and hopefully this will finish soon. In the meantime, I'll just come back and ask does anybody have any other questions around anything I've presented so far? How do I point a domain to a specific folder in my Lightsail instance? So I don't have the answer for you on that. I don't have time to dig in and set up a Lightsail instance right now and show you custom domains for Lightsail. But if I did have more time on the stream, that's certainly something we could dig into. So maybe next time. I think we also did a episode on Lightsail, if I'm not wrong. John, refresh my memory. Did we already do one on Lightsail, and did we show custom domains for that? Let me know in the chat. Maybe we can show Mr. Pentakills that episode. So look, here we go. We're already on the next step here, which is it's asking me to verify domain ownership, make a Cname record with this content. So, what it wants me to do is set up a Cname record for this subdomain .hollandme.com to point to this value. So I'm going to do that in Route 53 because that's where hollandme.com is managed in my personal account. But you could do this in any DNS provider, right? You go to whatever provider is managing your DNS for your domain that you have registered and make these changes. So we can see through my hosted zones, I've got a few things hosted here. We're going to go into hollandme.com. And I'm going to click create record. Simple routing is fine. I'm going to define a simple record. And the record that's the record name it wants. It wants this to be a Cname record. The value that it wants me to put there is this. Make sure I don't have any leading spaces. That looks good. So I'll define that simple record. Now we just need to wait a little bit longer because after that record's created, Amplify console is going to be pinging my DNS provider to see that Cname record got put in place. And once it detects that that's in place, it'll go ahead and continue the work and then tell me the next step, which is to set up the Cname to point something to hollandme.com to a server that Amplify console is going to host my site from. There we go. Look, they've already validated the Cname exists in my DNS provider, so that was nice and fast. So let's wait a little bit, and hopefully, while we have time on stream, we'll get to the next step, which is just adding the Cname record, and we should be good to go. Looking at questions, what do we see here? Yes, John, we did speak about it. Excellent. Thank you for the tip on that. What's the difference between a hosted zone and a domain registered? As John says, a hosted zone is the top level of the domain, while the records live within it. How often do we do these, Mr. Pentakills? So we have the show, Developers Let's Code, and we produce this show once a week, or we have been doing it once a week this is episode 10, so for the last 10 weeks. We've got a few more episodes planned between now and around the time that we do reInvent, late November. If you're unfamiliar, reInvent is our biggest show of the year for AWS, where we announce the coolest new features And reInvent this year's will be an online event instead of in person over the course of 3 weeks. We'll have lots of content coming out for that. So we'll take a pause on this show towards the end of the year when reInvent season starts. And we're going to come and regroup as a team and figure out our plan for if we want to continue this show next year or create something new for you all. So stay tuned for more info on that. Great. We can see here, this just changed. So the required Cname records are not configured. So they've verified my domain ownership. Now it tells me to click Actions, View DNS Records, and configure the required Cname. So let's do that. There we go. So we want something.hollenby.com to point to a Cname of this CloudFront distribution that, again, CloudFront is the content delivery network that AWS provides. So I need to make a Cname record for that subdomain, something to point here. So let's do that in my DNS provider. I'll create a record again. A simple record that's going to say something.hollenby.com. It's going to be a Cname to this value. Define the record, create the record, and now we just need to wait for that DNS to propagate. So I'll just talk for another minute or two and answer some questions, and then we'll hopefully see my custom subdomain from a different account, right? Or you could pretend it was a different DNS provider working with Amplify console. So those are the steps involved. So even if the DNS doesn't propagate in time to actually live demo this, you've now seen the steps involved to set up your own custom domain with Amplify console hosted sites, even if that custom domain is not managed by Route 53 in your same account that you're using with Amplify console. So it's pretty easy. It can take a few minutes, but it's really not that bad, especially if you're familiar with creating Cname records, because that's really all we needed to do. Great question here from Stone Sue. I already have a hosted static site on Amazon S3. What happens if I switch it to Amplify? So what happens is the billing model is a little bit different. So that's an important thing to call out. So you can look at the pricing and compare them. So Amplify console charges a certain amount for the amount of, well, here, let's go and let's look. I'll bring this up. This is a good thing to check while we're waiting for DNS to propagate. Amplify console pricing for static web hosting. This is what I want. Okay, let's look at pricing. So one important thing to note is if you're new to AWS, then we have something called the free tier. And you can see here, the free tier is something that expires at the end of your first 12 months of the lifetime of the account. So if you haven't had your AWS account longer than 12 months, then you're still falling into the free tier where you'll be able to leverage 1,000 build minutes per month with Amplify console. That's the time it spends building your site. And then for hosting, we're going to cover 5 gigabytes of stored content per month for hosting and 15 gigabytes of served content per month. And then after that point, if you're no longer in the free tier or you exceed that, then the billing model's like this. 0.1, so 1 cent per build minute, and then 2.3 cents US cents per gigabyte stored per month, and 15 cents per gigabyte served. So that pricing is slightly different than the S3 static site pricing. So it's just important to note that difference. But what you get for this is one thing that's really cool about Amplify console that's not really comparable to S3 static site hosting. First of all, with S3 static site hosting, you may not be using CloudFront with that. And so this is included, CloudFront is set up and included here. That's my knowledge. The other thing to look at is, I was just scrolling down here to see if we have a comparison with the S3 static hosting, but we don't. But the other thing I want to call out is something in the features for Amplify console that maybe they're actually going to say here, which is the instant and atomic deployments. Yeah, so this uses a feature that's available in Amazon CloudFront behind the scenes, just in case you're interested to know that it's going to automatically switch over your new content atomically as soon as your build is passing in a way that's safe for all of your users requesting the content. So that's really nice. That means that nobody's going to get the old content and then some other requests are going to get the new content. All the successful deployments are immediately available after an update, and a failed deployment is not going to impact your production traffic. So that's super nice, and you get that quality of life improvement using the Amplify console service. At this point, maybe we should just check and see if the DNS is propagated. So we set up something.hollenby.com. Let's see. Yep, there it is. So if you remember, we were just deploying that HTML5 up massively themed static content. We did that in a different account with custom, DNS setup, a custom domain name setup rather, and it worked. So that's actually perfect, right on time. I'm just where I want to end the stream in about an hour's time now. So that was great. Let me just wrap up by saying, yeah, the demo gods were awesome today. Thank you very much. So let me wrap up by saying thank you all so much for coming and staying for the last hour and letting me share this with you. Your interactivity and questions are what makes this really fun. So I appreciate that. And just a shout out, next week, we're going to show you other features of AWS Amplify that make it easy to do things beyond static web content. So, provisioning serverless style resources in your account to support single page JavaScript apps and things like that, for example. Really neat stuff. We'll come back to you next week. Same time, same channel with that content. So thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, feel free to look for me online. I'm the only Gabe Hollenby out there that I know of. So just drop me a message on a DM on Twitter or something, or mention on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Thanks so much, and have a great day ahead of you wherever you are in the world.